Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us today. I think there might be a slight delay, but I think you've got me now. We should be live. So thanks so much for coming today to the Lunch and Learn sessions. My name's Charmaine Connors. I'm Community Engagement Manager here at the Coders Guild, and as part of my remit, I help to deliver and coordinate the Lunch and Learn project, which is a series of 30-minute sessions brought to you weekly via YouTube Live, designed to inform, inspire and educate career-minded people who love to learn. And this week's topic, Key Learnings from My First Year in Tech, will be delivered by our awesome guest speaker, Mr. Joe O'Reilly, who's very kindly joined us today all the way from Nimbus Hosting to give an insight into what it's really like to work in tech, and also to share some of his career experiences. So a great session to be had today. But before I pass over to Joe and get started, I'd like to encourage you to subscribe to the YouTube channel so as to not miss any content drops. And also, if you're feeling the content, do give us a like, give us a thumbs up, because it's an awesome indication that you're enjoying the content. And it's also a great way to pay it forward to somebody else who might find value in the content. And it is the greatest opportunity to help our community to grow. So without further ado, over to you, Joe. Thanks.
Cool. Thank you very much. I'm a junior developer at Nimbus Hosting, so just thought I'd give this presentation to try and give you an insight what it's like in tech, some of the things that are going to come up, some of the things that I do, and go from there, really. So just a brief agenda is going to go over a bit of my background, how I got into tech, some of the things day to day as a coder, what can happen, talk a bit about continual self-development, and a little bit at the end talking about imposter syndrome as well. So briefly, my background, I worked in sales for most of my 20s, don't have a computer science degree, I didn't do anything kind of technical at college or anything like that. Decided I wasn't happy with what I was doing. I did enjoy sales, but it wasn't quite didn't see it as long term, and knew there was more that I could do. Essentially, that's probably what a lot of people who do these boot camps and stuff like that do as well. They want a bit more, something a bit more fulfilling. So I've taught myself how to code over the last few years. Lucky enough to land a job in tech coding, which really enjoy. So it's more, this is going to be more not what you can expect, but the first kind of couple of months and everything like that when you do get into tech. So actually your first week or two, you're probably not going to be writing loads of code. It's one of those things where it's a lot of HR stuff. You need to learn the code base. There'll probably be lots of documentation for you to read through, all that kind of stuff. And then from there, the first few months really going to be about getting to know the code base. So you're not going to get really complex problems at the start, especially if you are going in at that junior level. Your manager needs to know more around what level you're at. So then they can decide what sort of problems that they want to give you. So a little bit about continual self-development as well. I think once you are lucky enough to get your first coding job, it's really important to carry on with self-development, just to make sure that you are continuing to be a better developer. So I think it's important to code outside of work. There's kind of pros and cons against it and for it, but I think it really does kind of it has a compounding effect. So when you're working on other stuff outside of work, you're learning new technologies, new techniques, everything like that, and it all goes into kind of becoming a better developer from that point of view. You actually get better at getting better as well. So when you've got problems that You go up against lots of different problems when you're doing stuff on your own. There's no one necessarily there to help you, so you have to kind of figure out them on your own. Being able to figure out problems, being self-reliant, it helps you get better at getting better. And that just is really, really helpful for not just coding, but other stuff as well. When I was in Perth, I used to recruit in technology. So I knew quite a lot of like high performing software engineers and all that kind of stuff. When I finally got a job in tech, I actually messaged one of them on LinkedIn, and I kind of just said to him, what do I have to do to become like a much better dev and all that kind of stuff. And pretty much word for word, this was what he said. So you got to work hard. If everyone does 37.5 hours a week at work, once you take out all the bits that kind of distract you from doing it, you might actually do your craft for 20 hours a week. If you're doing a 57.5 hour week, you're basically doubling the amount of code you're writing as well. So if you can imagine this over a whole year, that's an extra couple of 100 hours of coding. That's really going to add up, and especially if you do that over years, especially at the start, it's really important to carry on doing this, because you will become a better developer really, really quickly. So another thing is you do get a lot of skills from personal projects. So you get better at reading documentation. That's definitely in the last kind of year when I've been doing it day to day. You get a lot better at reading documentation. Sometimes it's the quickest way to find out what you need to know, and when you know how to search it and all that kind of stuff, it makes it a lot easier to solve problems. You also learn a lot of new technologies, which is really cool, especially if you're in this industry. I'd like to think you are interested in kind of what's new and what's out there and what different things you could do. So this is definitely a big benefit of having personal projects. And you can always bring these into your job as well. So try and kind of implement them when you can, talk to your team about them, all those kind of things. And then finding out generally about the newest tech trends as well. So personally, for me, I watch quite a lot of YouTube. YouTubers will generally they'll post about new stuff that's come out. I watch it, and then you can kind of dig in from there. This is generally the thing with personal projects as well. You get yourself into a positive cycle of learning, which is important. So, for example, here you're going to try a new project. You're probably going to get stuck. Well, you're most definitely going to get stuck. But because of that, you're going to have to learn something new or solve a really difficult problem. And then you're going to feel good about building something or solving that problem. And it's then going to motivate you to try a new project. So this kind of cycle is really, really useful. And then you're just going to become a much better developer. Before you know it, you'll be a hacker like this guy. Now, lastly, I wanted to talk about imposter syndrome. Really, it's something that you should be aware of. It's not just a coding tech thing. It's in everything from any other job, most jobs that you can imagine. Everybody gets it. Your boss is going to get it. Your colleagues are going to get it. You'll probably get it at some point as well. So what is it? It's basically feeling like a fake or a fraud. You never feel good enough. You're filled with self-doubt, and you have this kind of habit of playing down your own strengths and find it hard taking credit for your own accomplishments. So just recognizing these things is really, really important, because it will creep up in you, especially I think it's more common for self-taught or bootcamp coders because they haven't got a computer science degree. And there will be like complex things that come up that you just don't understand. And some people have studied for years to try and understand, this really specific thing. So we were talking in the office about this yesterday. And this is a graph that kind of explains this knowledge versus confidence thing. At the start, you feel really confident. you don't really have a lot of knowledge, but you kind of think, yeah, I've got this, it's fine. But then as the task or whatever you're trying to do gets more and more complex, you kind of spiral down. And you're in this area where you think you're never going to understand this. This is like the pit of despair. So then you can build up on that, you learn more, and then you get to this point where it kind of levels out. So when you do kind of get your first tech job, just remember this, like this happens for everyone. Yeah, it's a good thing to kind of take away. So just trying to recognize it. Once you've recognized that it's happening to you, that's when you can start to reach out to others and try and fix it, basically. So this is some of the stuff that I use to overcome it. Talk about it with your peers or your boss or your mates or wherever. Everybody's been there, and I'm sure them sharing their experience will help. On the flip side of things as well, you sharing your experience with it to someone else will really help them as well. So just remember, it does go both ways. Try and have a positive outlook on it. If you aren't getting it every now and then you're probably a bit too comfortable in your job as well. Some of the times when I didn't get it was when I was doing, a delivery driver at Waitrose or something like that. Not really going to get imposter syndrome then because it's a pretty easy job. Whereas when you're developing, it is complex, and the more experience you get, the more difficult problems you get to solve, and it will just keep cropping up. It's always good to really remind yourself how far you've come as well. So really good example would be like every now and then I'll look at my GitHub and I'll go to some of the older branches that I've made where it's making a really, a basic website. And I remember struggling how to link style pages and all that kind of stuff. If you just compare that to where you're at now, it will make a massive difference, because then you'll realize, like, although I'm struggling with this problem is way harder than the problem I used to struggle with. So it's a good thing to remind yourself how far you actually have come. And yeah, just remember the problems that you have to deal with in coding, they don't necessarily get easier. You just get better at dealing with them. And as you learn more, you just get harder problems. So it is something to bear in mind, but it can also be really fun as well. So that pretty much wraps it up. It was supposed to be a bit longer, but I didn't want to kind of fill it with fluff or anything like that. So thank you for listening. And any questions?
Thank you, Joe. Thanks for that. Sorry, I'm just waiting to catch up. I know there's a bit of a delay here, but that was awesome. Thank you for letting us sit in the mind of a developer for a while there. Some really good information and completely relatable. I resonated with a lot of what you said there, and especially I think the consistent learning. I remember somebody saying to me when I was kind of going into my first role that, the worst thing you can do for yourself is take your foot off the gas now. You just got to really keep going, and it does definitely compound. And I just had a quick question actually before I have a look in the chat there, because I know there is something in there too. But would you have any kind of resources or that you found particularly helpful when you was doing your self-learning, at the very beginning?
So YouTube was a massive one for me. There's ones like Traversing Media, Web Dev Simplified, what's some of the other ones in there? I can't remember. Fireship's just a good one to watch. But yeah, they were really good. There's a lot of blogs as well, like dev.to, that's a really good site. What's the front end one? It's like Front End Focus. That's a really good one. It's like an email list you can sign up to. They send through really, really good like CSS articles. And then from a podcast point of view, if you are like driving to work or on the train or whatever, Syntax is, I think most people know Syntax. That's a really, really good one. Yeah, that's what's some of the other podcasts? JavaScript Jabber. Yeah, and then you can get more specialized ones, like there's ones specific to certain languages and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, things like that can really help. It's all kind of osmosis in a way. Before you know it, you'll like start saying stuff and you're like, oh, I didn't even know I knew that. So it's, yeah, it's really useful.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. That's a lot of really helpful resources, and a few of those I'd not come across. So thanks for those. Yeah, we have another couple of questions. Would you, sorry, which which development language would you say would be a good start for beginners? Maybe a
Um,
slightly easier to take in, I guess.
yeah, JavaScript is like the de facto in most places. Again, it does depend on what you want to do, but and what kind of background you have and that kind of stuff. But generally, JavaScript's the most beginner friendly. You can then move on to kind of back end development with JavaScript, but the concepts are different. But because you know JavaScript, it makes it a lot easier to do stuff. So yeah, that would probably be the one I'd recommend to anyone learning to code.
Awesome. Thanks, Joe. Thank you. Great shout. Okay, a couple more. What tools would you say are a requirement to start developing? What do you need to kind of get
Um,
started, you say?
just a, I mean, the good thing about kind of JavaScript and stuff is it runs in the web. So um, there's loads of stuff now that have come out around like web containers and things like that as well. So um, what's the website? I think there is a website, and basically you can start any project and everything's in the web now. So as long as you've got access to a browser, you can do it. Also, there's versions now where you can code on tablets as well. So, and that's again using this kind of web container technology. So really, there's not a lot, like the barrier to entry now is pretty low. I mean, an internet connection and a screen. And even from that, like, I don't know, I think when I started doing it, I was like on the work computer in between stuff, looking at like W3 schools and stuff like that. So yeah, it can be pretty low barrier to entry.
That's good. That's good to hear. Yeah. I guess it doesn't take much to get started, does it? So like you say, an internet connection, laptop, tablet, and yeah, you're pretty much good to go if you've got the necessaries on there. All right, awesome, thank you. And let's take this question then. Where do you see the future of development going? Do you think maybe computers will be able to code for us? Do you think we'll move kind of purely over to low code, or do you think purely your opinion? Yes.
Yeah, it's like it's a tricky one. I've used GitHub Copilot. It's pretty rubbish in some things. So that's not a threat anytime soon. And they're kind of, I think products like that are kind of self-defeating because they're as good as the people that develop on them. And if everyone starts using it, then you're only going to have like the average de facto standard of the code never go up. So I don't ever see that kind of beating developers. You have to be creative and all that kind of stuff. So I don't see that going anywhere. Low code stuff I can't really speak too much about because I haven't used it loads, but at the end of the day, you've still got developers developing low code stuff. You can't develop low code stuff with low code stuff. So there's always going to be a need for developers. I think that whole low code stuff is more of a threat to, not a threat, but it's more going to replace the people not coding than the people coding because it's automating their jobs for them. It's not automating developer jobs for them.
That's a good point. Yeah, yeah. Good answer. Thanks for that. It's good to get your thoughts on that. Yeah, I've seen that discussion quite a bit on LinkedIn, especially. So
yeah.
But yeah, I agree. It's a great shout. But thank you. And just lastly, I'd love to know what keeps you in software. what does it for you? What's the best thing, would you say? What makes you tick?
There's always so much more to learn. So like there's always another language, another framework, a better way of doing something, a new crazy idea or something to try and make, or something like that. That's kind of a big motivating factor for me. Yeah, you just never stop learning, and I enjoy it. So I enjoy like learning new stuff. Yeah, so that's probably the main thing.
Brilliant. Thanks, Joe. Yeah, definitely always something to learn. I think every day is probably a little bit different, isn't it, in dev? And yeah, always something to learn. So if you love learning, then software might be for you. Definitely the learning never stops. But awesome. Thank you for answering all those questions, and thanks for sending the questions in again, guys. Brilliant session, and thank you for your time. I don't think we've got any more questions, so I think we'll end it there then. But that was
Cool.
awesome. Thank you.
All right.
So thanks, Joe.
Thank you very much. All right.
You're welcome.
Thank you for having me. Cheers.
No, you're welcome. Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks, guys. Well, thanks for joining us today. I will close off, and of course, the video will be available on YouTube if you want to give it a watch. I want to give it a share, and of course, again, do subscribe to the YouTube channel. And if you've enjoyed today's content, then give us a thumbs up. That'd be awesome. But until next week, I'll say bye. So thanks, everyone. Thank you.